So step 20 is to install the X-axis timing belt. And you'll notice I have removed the assembly from the 3D printer. I don't know why they wanted me to install the belt on this while it was installed on the machine, because there are the mounting brackets here and here underneath. So near impossible to get at. I also took the liberty, since this was off, to remove these holders, the brass nut holders, and tighten them. I also adjusted them sort of halfway up. I don't know if you can see that here. Sort of most of the way up onto the slotted holes. They don't exactly tell you where it's supposed to be, but I assume that's where it has to go, because this comes, the print head comes really close to the bed. In fact, it doesn't have any end stops going down towards the bed. So anyways, I put that together like this. I tightened everything up a little bit more. I've loosened these brass nuts because they seem to need to move. On top of that, I've done a little bit of research, and it looks like there's a few really good upgrade parts that are available for this. So I think those are some of the first things I'll be printing, aside from a calibration print. But other than that, let's get going on this. Now, this is a little difficult because here's the belt, and I have to run it sort of this way, teeth down, and I have to run it through here, loop around underneath, and come back and get bolted, kind of zip tied together like that. So I'm not sure I'm going to achieve that, but let's give this a shot. Maybe if I feed it through and grab this, fold it back underneath like so. Well, that's not cooperating. I do like that this is the metal core belt, because like that it's stiffer and less apt to stretch on you. Although some of the upgrade parts I've noticed are better tensioners. So these are very awkward to set the tension. The new ones hopefully will be even better. But that's the brilliant part about a 3D printer, right? Is that you can actually customize it and upgrade it. Okay, so yeah, if I move the carriage over this way, now I have access to the tooth belt under here. Just hold that in the extrusion. There we go. Okay. So I can kind of lift this out. There we go. And I can now put a zip tie on it. I'm going to use kind of a short, kind of like I'm not going to use too much loose end here. I don't know if you can tell, but I have this little bit. I won't have too much loose because I don't want the trying to get the zip ties out. I don't want I don't want it to foul on this idler here. Got tongue-tied for a minute there. So I'm going to put this zip tie on loosely. I'm going to slide it as close as I can to the head and then tighten it down. So I'm going to pull the whole assembly and then kind of give that a tight. Okay, so that's a bit loose, but as long as I get the other side tight, it should be okay. Also, I suppose I can also tighten it with the tensioners, because if you remember, I set this as loose as possible so to have more sort of play when I go to tighten it. More travel when I go to tighten it, I should say. Cut that off. Okay, now I need to run the belt up and over the tensioner and idler assembly underneath this carriage now. So I'm going to move the carriage over to one side so I can feed it through. Take it out of the crack here. See, even this flathead screwdriver came with the kit, which is pretty nice. Never have too many of these little flathead screwdrivers. Okay. Now pull that over the stepper motor. And if I tug this, yeah, see when I pull this way on the top here, it pulls the carriage over. Okay, that's good. I'm going to flip that back over. And then, I'm not sure how I'm going to do this end. I'll make sure this stays tight too. But let's see. Maybe if I can push it straight down and bend it around. Although, because it is a metal belt, it seems like it would have issues bending underneath there. So maybe I'll do it the way I did the other one. So put it under like this. Sort of lift this up out of the extrusion. Like that. Bend it over this way. And see if I can send the carriage back over. It's kind of tight in there. And then yeah, I can grab it here. Perfect. Okay, so now I need to make sure that I tension this as tight as it'll go. It's not easy doing this. You know, this would have been it would have made much more sense to do this beforehand. I understand that they need the space in order to, or they need the alignment to be perfect in order to install kind of this piece on. But I mean, before you install the threaded rods, I don't see why you can't just install the carriage, then the belt, then the threaded rods. Making sure this stays in the tensioner. You guys that probably have built a few 3D printers might be looking at this and saying I'm doing it wrong. It's very possible. This is my first 3D printer build. Okay, I'm going to put this around like this. I'm going to leave a little bit of slack here too, but not too much. And then I'm going to chop off the excess. So I'm just going to try to hold this back, pull the belt tight. Going to make sure it's not stuck on anything. Nope. Okay, and I'm going to try to chop off the excess, most of it at least. The steel cores are very hard, so I used my my little flush trimmers. I don't think I should have used those. I figured since they're just a cheap 3D printer kit, I just figured the steel would be very weak, but it's actually quite strong. So I may have dented the cutters. I'm not sure. I'd have to look closer. Okay, so I've got a little bit of... Actually, I've got no play here. I think I managed to put it on tight enough the first try, but if I need to tighten it up, then I can always just loosen these screws and pull out on the tensioner here. But you see, this tensioner, you have to loosen the screws and kind of push this way, whereas the upgraded ones still bolt here, but they have like a threaded like a screw which tensions this. I think is way better than this design, but you get what you pay for, sort of. So let me see if I can push this out even more. I'm going to loosen that one. I'm going to pushing with my thumb here. I did get a little bit more tension out of that. Yeah, basically this is not moving without the use of the stepper motor, which is good. very little play there. So I'd probably want to install an upgraded tensioner mechanism before this mechanism becomes too slack to use. So that's pretty good. I think the next step is very simple. I think the next step is simply to install this fitting here. So this is a fitting that threads into the extruder, and then you just put the, kind of shove the Teflon tube over it. So I'm going to do that now. And after that, we can put the whole 3D printer back together and move on with the build. So I'm just going to give this a tighten here. I have a, oops, I should probably support that because it's only pulling on the acrylic. And now I can just kind of push this in. There we go. And this is a one-way fitting. So you put it in and that's it. I would love to put a little bit of filament into there to see if it goes in smoothly, to make sure this is all right before I install it. So let me get some filament and I'll be right back. And so what I have here is the filament that's actually provided with this kit. I don't know if I'll be really using this filament. It's not on a roll, so it's going to be really awkward to dispense, but whatever. Came with the kit, so might as well use it. Now the way it works is you have your extruder here. There's a little hole right about here, so I can feed it into there. And if you see here, the filament, actually, you know what, I'll zoom you in. Give me a second. Okay, that should be a much closer view of this. So you see the filament poking through right there. Okay, and what you do is you press on this lever here. You'll see that moves that bearing away, and you should be able to push this filament straight through into the hole here. You see that clamps, and as you push, it should go directly into the Teflon tube. And you see it's not working for me. Now they do say you may have to straighten this. I'm going to make sure this is properly inserted, and it is. So there it goes. It's not easily finding its way into the Teflon tube. Like, it's in here, but it's not going into the Teflon tube. I'm going to try rotating it. Maybe a different angle will help. Nope. So this will be a problem if I can't load the filament. Nope, I'm going to try cutting it with pliers, or with the cutting end of the pliers. See if the little point it makes will make it easier to go in. Nope, for some reason it won't go in. Let's loosen this and see what's happening. Okay, so that's all the way in. Or was it? Let's push it a little bit harder. Let's see if the filament goes in here. Doesn't go in very easily. It does go in though. Okay, so let's thread this back on. It could be that this extruder isn't very good. Don't forget, I don't know. This is just what the kit came with. Give that a little tweak just to make sure it's tight. I assume a lot of this stuff will be rattling its way apart because the stepper motors are quite noisy and have a lot of vibration. No, doesn't seem to want to go. Okay. Take it off again, and I'm going to try just feeding the filament through without the fitting there. it goes right through. But you see how the filament has kind of that angle, right? Not sure if you literally have to make it straight. Let's try like that, get a little bit of a wonky curve to it. Give it a little tweak. No, it still won't go into the Teflon tube. If I loosen this now, we'll see how far it is when it gets jammed. Yeah, it seems to go all the way up to the Teflon tube. Right, you see, oh, sorry, right there. It seems to go all the way to the Teflon tube, but not through it. And obviously, if I put some length out, wiggle it around, I should be able to feed it in now. Yeah, feeds in no problem now. I think that's going to be a problem. Now, I do have some extra Teflon tube if I need to, but I'm going to see if I can't just add a chamfer onto the inside of the tube. So let me get this fitting apart and I'll bring you back. So here it is removed. I had to figure out the trick. Basically, you push this fitting in, you push the tube out, push the tube in deeper, and then you pull it out and you release this. So that's how you take that out. So a chamfer now, as you can see here, it's a pretty small hole, and as you can see here, the filament just barely fits in there. So I figured I could take my hobby knife here and just kind of roll it around on the inside here, making sure none of it falls into the tube. You see, I made that hole a little bit bigger, but only for a few millimeters. So that's looser here, but just as tight further in. Hopefully this will be good enough. I'm going to put that in like that. Thread this in. This time I won't tighten it down because this is what, like attempt number 4 to 5 to put this in. So in it goes. I'm going to bring you to the, so you can see. Okay, I still need it to line up with the, and there we go. Threads in perfectly. So again, to remove, you push this ring in, push the tube in, then you can pull it out, but you have to do it 2 fingers, I think. Push, push, and then pull. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so I just put a little chamfer in there, and now, as you can see, put this back in. Still secure, can't pull it back out. I'm going to put the filament in there. Still need to work it around, and then, yeah, it pushes right, it goes right into the tube. This is perfect. So yeah, just put a little bit of a chamfer into your Teflon tube. I think it'll make things a lot easier. But that being said, I believe we can move on to the next step now. And yes, we can. So I think the next step I'm going to do before I reinstall this whole assembly onto the 3D printer. So let me bring the 3D printer up here and we'll go on to the next step.